Wait, we're recording now.
We are still recording. You guys are still recording yours, right?
Yep, I'm recording my shit.
Yes.
We're good.
Correct.
So, new news. Russell Brand, of course, is charged for raping. I want to jump into this space.
What space? Is that the rape space?
No, not rape space.
Okay.
The wisdom teaching space.
Okay, good. I'm relieved. I'm relieved to hear that.
I got my beads on.
We need to dress in linen and like...
Oh, yeah, of course. Like Burning Man. Burning Man style.
Perfect. Okay, autochthonous fashion. Perfect. I love it.
Linen. It's nice.
It's the podcast. And I'm back on it. And I'm not alone. It's you guys too. Eric, Victor, Diego. And here we are. We are catching up. How's things? Where was I? I was dealing with some stuff. We'll call it medical stuff.
Religious issues.
No one died, but
Yeah, it's nothing like that.
But I didn't know that no one was going to die. So I had a bit of an emotional crisis.
Makes sense.
And that's why he had plastic surgery. That's the medical.
Yeah. I had a botched plastic surgery, but then they just reverted my face. They Control Z, and now we're back to normal.
Yeah, it just took a bit of time.
For real, when I had to drive to the hospital every day for like a month. And the crisis, uncertainty, this led me down a path that many people follow, which is they discover religion. So I've discovered religion. I'm going to go with Buddhism.
You already knew about it before, though, but you discovered it in a more profound way.
No, I knew intellectually, but I didn't know.
But you felt it.
Involved.
Yeah, but you didn't need it.
I didn't need it, exactly.
Now you need it.
You can know something.
Yeah.
You can know something, but not have experienced it.
Exactly.
Knowing that, knowing how.
You need
Felt its power.
You need necessary minimum cost for religion to function.
It's like when you're on mushrooms and you look at the stars when you're camping or something, and you're like, the stars are millions of light years away. I'm looking back in time. And this sounds like very profound to you at the moment. But then if you explain it to someone else the next day, they're like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as experiencing it.
True.
Something sounds really cool in the moment.
Yeah, but I've always liked Last Samurai, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So I needed
a good one.
I needed a religion, so I just picked up the least offensive one.
Why Buddhism, can I ask?
Well, I read a bunch of Buddhist philosophy, which we've never touched on this podcast because we're afraid to be racist. But I think we should just be. We'll just do it. We'll just be Orientalists. It's a bad word.
I'm happy. I mean, I already come out of the closet as a pro-China propagandist a long time ago, so I'm already on board. Count me in.
I feel like, I mean, maybe this is wrong, but like my feeling is that like real Buddhists, by the nature of what Buddhism entails, would not care about cultural appropriation. It just wouldn't make sense. It would be impossible to care about that and be a Buddhist, I think. Maybe that's wrong, but that feels true from what I know about the practice of Buddhism. Because it's like, that's such a stupid thing to worry about. It's just like it's like you're going to spend your time being outraged.
The difference is in like Christian denominations where they actually just fought intercontinental wars over them. There's like different denominations, quote unquote, of Buddhism, but they all think their own is right, but not to the point where they have to kill anyone who believes different things.
That's cool.
Although there have been some fights in like Myanmar and stuff between like but that's only because the Buddhists, I think, get attacked by other religions, maybe.
No, the Buddhists are killing the Muslims in.
Oh,
Myanmar.
yeah.
There's like the anti-Buddhist or the anti-Muslim Myanmar.
Oh,
Buddhists.
yeah, okay.
Generally peaceful, but every
Does your audio
religion...
sound weird too? Is that my imagination? Sorry to like be bringing up more audio issues. Yeah,
Mine?
Eric.
Uh-oh.
Does that
I
sound
hope
normal
not.
to you? Maybe it's normal. Sorry, it's my imagination. Just ignore me.
Oh, maybe not.
No, okay, we're fixing.
There we go.
Oh, that's better. Okay, shit.
It's okay, guys. Everything is nothing.
Yeah.
It's not like we did a bunch of episodes without you somehow. And
Yeah, you come back, and now all our settings are fucked. This can't be a coincidence.
Come on, after 200 episodes, you can expect some mistakes here and there.
Something's going on here. Something's going on. Yeah, I've been looking into Buddhism a little bit from an art history perspective, because a lot of, well, the AP art history courses that American high school students might take involves lots of works of art that are Buddhist. And Buddhism is, well, it's interesting because when you study all the different kinds of art expressions from Judaism and Islam and Christianity, and then you look at the Buddhist stuff like Tibetan Buddhism and how that stuff, gets, they build these Buddhist statues that represent the original Buddha or the transcendent Buddha, and they have all those hand positions that have all these different meanings, like calling upon the earth as witness is one of them, all that fun stuff. So I do have I haven't been thinking philosophically about religion and Buddhism on this level though. So,
But what aspects, I'm curious, Pills, did you find awakening?
Just the basic practice stuff. But I want to make a distinction because it's not like Buddhism, the religion, that's particularly interesting. But I was looking at their philosophy. And because I know what Zen is, I started with looking up Japanese philosophers. And we've never looked at these guys, but the stories that Heidegger was talking to Japanese philosophers and maybe jacked their shit. We're not sure.
Well, he has that dialogue too, where it's a Japanese speaker and a German speaker going back and forth.
Yeah, one of that guy that Heidegger was talking to is a member of something called the Kyoto School, and they're trained in like Hegel and Husserl and stuff that was popular in the 30s, 40s, 50s, but they kind of melded it with Japanese religion, which is mostly like Zen Buddhism. So they sound like they're Husserl and Hegel in form, but the themes are more Buddhist, like nothingness and the non-self. So like Heidegger, another similarity, they were writing while Japan was raping Nanking and all that stuff. So they do get a little fashy. They do get spirit and destiny of Japan against modernity.
The seed of German idealism. Oh my God.
Yeah, you just read Hegel for 1 hour and you're a fascist.
What the fuck, man? Yeah, exactly. I swear to God, it's so dangerous. The seed of German idealism is like, oh my God. What was the sentence? The dreams of idealism create monsters or something like that?
Sounds right.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know. I feel
the
like
dreams
Japan
of reason create monsters. The dreams of reason create monsters.
I feel like Japan had some fashy tendencies that predate Hegel.
Shogun, another great Orientalist experience.
The Shogunate.
Also a good show.
This is the definition of Orientalism: is like in The Last Samurai, Tom Cruise is depressed and he's an alcoholic and he's feeling guilt from massacring Native Americans, and he goes to the samurai village. If you haven't seen it, he goes to the samurai village, watches them do their painting and do their tea and their archery and swordsmanship and all this stuff, and he fixes his own life problems. It just requires the sacrifice of every samurai to make the white man happy with himself again.
I don't know if I ever saw that Tom Cruise version.
That's an amazing reading. So it was all worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Orientals all have to die so that one white man can stop drinking. And this is like 2004 movie. It's not that old.
I remember.
And then we have Shogun is kind of the same, but not as overt,
as drastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar storyline. Well, I was thinking about a movie that's somewhat recent that featured Japan and religion was Silence. But that doesn't really cover. But that was a good one. I think it's Scorsese, and it's like about the priests in Japan.
Arriving in Japan, yes.
About the
relevance for what
expulsion
we're
of the
of
think
the Christians. Yeah,
that period.
those pesky Christians.
They were getting a bit annoying, and Japan wanted to. I guess that was medieval Japan wanted to close off its borders, going into the Tokugawa period.
Exactly.
Was that like 19th century or something?
No, this would have
more
been
like the 17th,
16th, 17th.
16th. Yeah.
Oh, isn't that when the Shogun movie, Shogun show takes place?
Yeah, because
17th?
Shogun, because the Shogun,
Yeah, around
when
that.
Tokugawa took over, he was the one who kind of was like, "All right, you Christians, like we got to stop this. You guys are wicked annoying. Like let's get rid of you."
Spoiler. Oops.
You have the
History
context
spoiler.
of the Treaty of Tordesillas, where Spain and Portugal divided the world between the two of them.
Yeah.
And said everything on this side belongs to me, everything on that side belongs to you. But then when they get to Japan, they get complicated. And since they're both Christian in a way, it gets like very, very messy. But like, can I direct the conversation in a direction? Pils, do you mind like stating your definition of religion?
Well, I put out two solo episodes on just that question, and there's more to come. But religion, we read Durkheim, I think it was like last summer already. This stuck in my craw and it never left. But for Durkheim, religion is about divisions, and these divisions divide up space, they divide up time. But religion always has a very specific use case, like a physical, material, ordinary need that it solves. It's a problem solver. It's a social machine that solves these problems. And if you combine this with systems theory, then you can completely get rid of any universalizing tendency that religions have. Like this thing that I believe in is true. It's always been true. It will always be true in the future. You can just get rid of that if you understand religion to be a social problem solver. And then you can also divide between good and bad religion. Because good religion is stuff that still solves problems. My favorite example is standing in line. It's not in your best interest to stand in line. If you're like big, you could push an old lady out of the way. You could get out of the store way quicker, but yet everyone still stands in line. This is a ritual. It's not going anywhere. It's not in everyone's best interest as individuals, but it's in the society, the social best interest of the group. And what you guys were talking about the other week about group psychology and Freud's group psychology, I mean, I was humming along. I was nodding along.
Yeah, on lineups, I always remember whenever I go take like the Via Rail train when I go back to Ottawa or when I'm coming back. I don't know if you guys have taken Via Rail, but I don't know, this is kind of an aside, but people always line up and I'm always like waiting and I'm always just like, but we all have assigned seats. Like, why are you guys lining up and just standing for like, I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to sit over here. And it's like being in line doesn't get you any benefit because like you have your seat. It's like, I guess you'll get to your seat like maybe a minute or two earlier if you're like at the front of the line. Anyway, just a funny, like that's an example of group psychology where like, I feel like if you just think about it for 2 seconds, you're like, I'm just going to fucking sit down. What's the hell is the point of this?
Well, on the airplane, you line up because you want to have over.
Yes.
Or what do you
Storage.
Overhead bin.
overhead storage? But is that true on the train too, or is it just completely?
No, I mean the train. There's way more space. It doesn't matter on the train. Like on the train, it doesn't. Like there's no risk of like you missing out on anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I always end up bringing my Spanish philosopher friends, but there's this friend of mine that is a PhD in aesthetics, and he's always said he has this running joke about creating a perfect society based on shopping cart return meritocracy. So we're going to redesign society based on who returns the shopping carts, because he says there's absolutely no incentive to do that. So you can judge a person by how often does he return and how properly he returns the shopping cart to the proper space. And I think it's very coincidental to what Pils is trying to say. So that's why I wanted to start with the definition of religion. We need the religion for people to return the carts to their places.
But yes, returning your cart is a religious activity because it's not in your self-interest. It's not in your best interest. It takes up your time, yet you do it anyway.
You don't get punishment if you don't do it, and you don't get a reward if you do it.
Create a religion and then say, these are the rituals you must perform to express your belief in this religion. One of them is returning shopping carts. The other one is lining up for the train.
So now my second question, Pils. So what's this definition of religion by saying, okay, so there's a societal necessity that in a way necessitates, sorry for the redundancy, necessitates religion as the solution for this societal problem. But it also emerges out of what you said is material needs. So either we have a problem or a conflict or something to be solved. And how does that notion differentiate from, for example, from what we read from Althusser in ideology?
I think I even said this when we read it. This is basically just what religion is. Ideology, but not ideology in just the like Marxist ideology is bad. Mm-hmm. And Marx didn't really say that, but Marxists tend to say that. Like ideology is bad.
Twitter Marxists.
But most, or even some academic Marxists, but most ideology is not capitalist ideology. It's just the ideology that keeps society functioning on a day-to-day level, like returning the shopping cart. And then when we get to religion with like Jesus is his own dad and he comes from outer space to die and then go back to outer space, and then you have like the medieval scholastics trying to deal with the substance mode distinction of like, oh yeah, well, Jesus and his father, they're the same substance, but they're different modes of the same substance. And all this stuff. The reason Buddhism is so superior is it's kind of an anti-religious religion. Like you don't really have to do anything. So we've been talking about this, about Japanese Buddhism, but the best thing that I discovered is this one guy, an Indian Buddhist, like 2,000 years ago. I want to say 2nd century, but his name is Nagarjuna. And it's hard to read this stuff, but also when I was in my crisis, like emotionally distraught sense, the style is much like we read ancient Greeks, like the Pyrrhonists or the Anaximander, where it's poetic, religious, and philosophy before there was any distinction between all those things. Bringing those things together on a personal level really changed my attitude towards what we're calling philosophy. Because if this is true about religion and philosophy, then what we call religion today is wrong, because it doesn't matter at all. What we call philosophy, insofar as it's like doing truth tables in your university office, like that just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Not even wrong. Just socially
it's not
useless.
Useful.
Yeah. So I've been writing poetry and doing gardening in a new way, in a Zen and the Art of Motorcycle maintenance way, and it feels different. It feels like I love something again instead of trying to solve problems.
So is that like? But it's interesting that it's like returning to like. Well, I don't know. It's like practice. I guess there's like maybe it's useful to think about some kind of distinction between like theory and practice, because it's like the things that you just mentioned are like, you know, you're pursuing. So I guess my question, this is a bit jumbled, but I'm wondering, it's like, do you think that insight that you had is what allowed you to just like be like, yeah, I'm just going to do these things, right? Or was it the doing those things that then made you be like have the insight? Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
oh yeah, okay. I had a religious experience. I had a spiritual experience. And don't worry, I'm a materialist, Diego. Don't get your panties in a bunch.
I haven't said my sentence yet.
No, this is definitely material conditions, because
why spoil it? Why take away the fun from me? Pills, why would you do that, man? I've missed you so much. Don't make me hate you.
The uncertainty caused me to do something that was completely out of character. But the religious experience, okay, the spiritual experience, I should say, a revelation even. This always happens in a crisis. You don't need a religious experience when everything's going well. You don't need religion at all when everything's going well. Religion is like the backstop that prevents society from collapsing in bad times, which is how it gets so warped over time. But you know, what I experienced was like this. Do you know when you stare at a word for too long, like a single word, and then the letters start to disintegrate? The meaning goes away? Yeah. Like this happens to graphic designers all the time, because you're looking at a word and you change the font, and then it looks like shapes.
Meaningless.
So this dispelling of an illusion, this is what happened to me, but not with a single word. It was like I was meditating-ish, but suddenly language just became meaningless, like all of it. It was like I could see it disintegrating, just like the shape of a letter disintegrates. And this is why when you're talking about the drug experience, you can't really explain why this is significant unless you're experiencing it. So this is the disconnection from that I've been speaking about for 5 years on here. It's structural linguistics. The sign eclipses the reality. Metaphors are the basic unit of meaning, not references.
Correct.
Language is differential. I've said all this, and I know all of this, and I've known it the whole time. But at a body level, feeling
you didn't
like...
experience it.
Yeah, that's what this spiritual experience was suddenly seeing the illusion as illusion. Like I felt like Neo in the Matrix when the thing all turns to code. And then that's when I went to Buddhist philosophy after that to try to figure out this disintegration. Because what I've known about it already is like in this meditative state, you enter only a single moment at a single time. You forget the past, you forget the future, you disintegrate the suffering, really, and focus on one thing.
But were you meditating purposely? Like,
yeah.
Okay, so you were, but like not necessarily based on Buddhism. It was just kind of like a more...
No, I kind of do that generally all the time. Like
Okay.
15 minutes, half an hour a day. But
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah.
it's for anxiety generally, like functionally.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think lots of people do that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not for me, but I've tried it. Well, here's an interesting thing. So I did look a little bit into what Freud is saying about religion. And he kind of makes some general remarks that fit in with what you're saying. You know, I think they fit in because he gives, religion 3 functions. One of them is similar to science. It, satisfies our need to know, knowledge, so it talks about origin stories. It talks about the universe, the order of things, origins of phenomena. It explains things. In that function, it shares with science, right? It tries to explain. And then a function it has that it doesn't really share with science is to comfort, right? What you're saying, kind of like it's like a backstop in situations where there's crises. Religion acts as there's a comfort function, right? Like God the Father will protect you, and ensure that through the ups and downs and bumps of life, it will all end well, like a mystery cult or something like that, right? It promises you wealth in the afterlife, like the Eleusinian mysteries in ancient Greece. Wealth and prosperity in the afterlife, though, not this life, because this one can go either way. And then the third function is the ethical one, like when you're talking about standing in lines, right? It also, the Father will protect us, and God the Father also prescribes certain behaviors you have to perform, and if you perform these behaviors, it's the ethical function, this third function of religion, which again is not overlapping with science too much, a little bit with moral philosophy, but with science, the only thing they're going to prescribe to you is like a method of research, how to research things, how to behave in that sense as a scientist, but not in your daily life towards other people so much. So Freud sees those 3 sort of general functions, and there's some distinctions with, and philosophy too. Philosophy doesn't have the power over tons of people that religion does. Philosophy's always been for a small echelon of people, and it tries to present a system, right? Like if you look at the Kantian system, or the one I look at, like Charles Peirce, it tries to present to you this whole system. Science doesn't seem to care to do that. It's okay just investigating phenomena that are fragmentary. I mean, there is all that theory of everything physicist crap, but that's, I don't know, maybe that'll go somewhere someday, but not yet.
Doesn't Freud also describe one of the origin points of belief in God is the oceanic, when the aspects of the world fall away and you kind of see, I mean, this is kind of what I just described. Like everything seems like one thing and you're in awe of it. And this is like it's a kind of religious experience.
Sublime in a sense.
Yeah, he talks a lot about, I mean, there's so many parallels in psychoanalysis between like the development of an individual person and the development of like civilization as a whole, right? So it's like sort of civilization finding its father figure, separating itself from the mother, right? When you're a kid and before you've sort of even mentally develop the capacity to separate, you are part of the mother, right? You're not separated from the breast. And that is a kind of individual equivalent of the oceanic social consciousness, right? Where we don't regard ourselves as separate individuals. We're all connected. Somehow, spiritually, we are all one. The oceanic consciousness, which actually I think is more in was it Christopher Isherwood and the Bhagavad Gita and those sorts of kind of non-Western religious ideas, I guess. The oceanic is coming. I mean, I've read some Christopher Isherwood fiction too, and he's into that sort of stuff. But anyway, yeah, Freud, ego, oceanic, like there's the separation from the mother stuff. Yeah. That's in there.
So I'm curious about what is the concrete content or the more positive content within Buddhism? Because you said you kind of had this like quasi-religious experience or religious experience, and then that led you to Buddhism. So then like when we think about what actually are the sort of, what is the account that Buddhism gives? I mean, I know a little bit about it, but like, have you found that additionally useful? And then I guess another question would be like, how does this shift sort of change your attitude to maybe like other philosophy we might talk about on the podcast? Like, has it changed your attitude or not really towards it? Like, obviously you're still going to think that some philosophy is a waste of time. Just curious about that.
Buddhists don't all agree. There's like three major traditions, and I don't know anything about any of them. I just like,
But there must be some shared sort of central claims. I
just like samurai, because they're good at swords and they make tea and do calligraphy.
They do sake when they're depressed.
This is what will save the young men who are grasping for meaning in the West.
Andrew Tate with a sword.
Right. So they like, yeah.
If the one, I think he's considered pretty much like the Aristotle of the Buddhist traditions. Is this guy that I mentioned, Indian Nagarjuna. And he is, look, I can't read this except project my experience of philosophy onto it. So I'm going to not apologize about it and just do it. He is the anti-Aristotle. He says exactly the opposite thing of Aristotle and sounds far more like a post-structuralist. He sounds far more like someone like Derrida reading Hegel. Which is the thing that you think is in here, the thing that you think is holding all of this up. It's it's not there.
Yeah.
So Nagarjuna's, his main book is called the Madhyamaka. And I don't think we know anything about like if he lived or if he's a real guy or if he's a group of people. It's that kind of person. But there's the people who's arguing against, which are, I guess, the proto-Hindu religion, like the Upanishads, those guys, they believe that there's these essences, there's substance or shit. I don't know what the word is. Svabhava. That's the thing that makes everything what it is. And you can see, like, the scholastics loved this from Aristotle because it meant that God...
Essence. Yeah.
God had put things all in their place. He had organized everything perfectly.
Things are things.
Yes, exactly. Things are things. But Nagarjuna says he actually goes through arguments. So it's not like a religious text. It's an argumentative text. saying there is no, it's like Parmenides, right? There's
Yeah.
there's no
Processes,
movement.
flows.
If you break things, or if you break things into pieces, there's no movement. You can't have an arrow flying. It's impossible. It's that kind of thing, but he's against, the svabhava as being an explanation for what's happening. So I found my brother from 2,000 years on the other side of the world, because he's an anti-realist. He says social codes, they're all fictional, they're all conventional, but you might as well believe in them anyway.
Yeah, they matter. They're fictional, but they matter. Yeah, exactly.
So this is like, he's speaking to my soul here. He says the self is an illusion. Been saying that from a postmodern or post-structuralist perspective. This is all stuff that he said 2,000 years ago. There are no substances. There's only change. So all this stuff is, things I believe, but it's coming from second century India.
I think I mentioned this a couple of times in the past episode that you were not here, Pills, but I read this piece from Freud, very late one, the one on Moses and monotheism. I don't know if you guys have any chance to read into it. But what I find really
interesting... You mean
Moses?
Moses, the burning bush Moses?
Moses from Judaism?
Moses. The guy.
Moses and monotheism I read it in Spanish, so sorry if the translation fails. But what is cool is that there was this guy in Egypt, Akhenaten. It was the first one to propose a monotheistic new structure of belief in Egypt.
I think we say it Akhenaten. Does that sound right to you guys?
Exactly. Yeah.
No idea.
Akhenaten. Yeah.
He invented monotheism.
Exactly. That guy. Okay. So he invented monotheism. For that, he was killed. Right? He tried to escape, and then he tried again to create monotheism outside. And why I think this story is interesting in a way is that because religious symbolic order organizes Archimedean points for truth to be established. So you have the god of rain, the god of thunder, the god of the god of no second. But then any one of those individual gods, they act as an Archimedean point to organize the possibility of truth to exist, because they are an outside pivot point for people to affirm that, yes, it's raining. Yes, this is why thunders exist. Yes, this is why crops are not growing. Yes, this is why we are attacked by animals. Yes, this is why we had a plague. So by monotheism, what it does, it centralizes everything in one Archimedean point, in one point that is able to hold everything else in its place so that truth can emerge. So it's weird to see the breathing between monotheism and polytheism in history. And according to me, what I like about your explanation is that we could do a reading of that based on necessity. When we are in need, we centralize gods that enable truth, like QAnon, Trump, the deep state. We create those gods and we use them to organize the possibility of truth to emerge. But if you take a broader look from outside of it, as you said, if we apply system theory to it, what we see is that all of those were always fake, but they were necessary and their function was real. Even if the truth they were asserting was based on a fake god, because they were all made up in the sense, the use they produce on the world was real. Like the effect they produce on the world was real. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, I think I've been trying for years to think of a way to break left versus right as basically our only political description. And this one actually does this, because Trumpists and Trumpians and QAnonists, they're not anti-society. They are pro-social. Just like the liberals on the other side, or the communist kids on the internet. Everyone is actually pro-social.
That's true.
We disagree on who's in there. We disagree
on what type of social.
Yeah, we disagree that certain people are toxins and need to be purged with horse dewormer from society or sent to El Salvador. Everyone agrees on one thing, and that's like society is important. We need to protect it. It's going through a rough time, and we have to fix this. Like this has to be solved. So left, right, I guess they're reasonable distinctions, but they concern, who needs to die so that we can have the society that we need.
Yeah.
That we want.
Yeah.
Didn't when Freud was talking about Moses in Egypt too, wasn't it that at that time when monotheism supposedly came about as this sun god worship thing, it was also at a time of like Egyptian empire imperialism, right? Like it became the sort of religion of an imperialist kind of nation that was emerging. And so suddenly you have this sort of shift from this pluralistic polytheistic religions to a monotheistic religion, which reflects, okay, great. We have this story now where there's one God and he is the king over everybody. And that's reflected here on earth where we want one empire that is by
The
God,
dominant.
whatever, wherever it is here. Now it's in Egypt and later it's in Europe, wherever it is, because kings love to think about themselves as divinely ordained. And okay, one global empire kind of model. So like, I mean, I don't know if there is that connection between monotheism and empire building. But then Freud's other thing when he's talking about where is this all this anti-Semitism coming from? Again, that's connected there. The shift from polytheism to an enforced monotheism produced resentment amongst many of the remaining polytheistic peoples, like the Germanic tribes, many of whom became monotheistic after the fall of Rome and whatnot throughout Europe, but after Constantine and all that. But yeah, like forced monotheism created this historical resentment that persisted. And there's a relationship to the guilt as well, and the attempt of Jesus to come along and expiate the guilt for that. But yeah, it's an expression of a kind of, that's one thing he connects it to, the return to paganism as a kind of lingering resentment over monotheistic religions, whether it's Christianity or Judaism.
And this we can connect to Nazism, because in a way what National Socialist Party was trying to do was to coil back from Christianism into paganism, like into the original values of the Germanic tribes.
Yeah, and what's interesting about even polytheistic pagan whatever religions is that even still there's usually one figure. There's tons of gods, but usually one of them is responsible for creating everything. But that one's just not identified as like the supreme god, right? Like Zeus didn't create the world, but he is the youngest. He's the youngest child of Kronos, who eventually overthrows him, and then he figures out a way to stop that cycle of overthrowing by what was it, like I think it had to do with taking Athena inside of himself and giving birth to Athena himself out of his head in order to stop the cycle of one of his someone else having a kid that's going to overthrow him, kind of thing. Whatever the specifics of that, but yeah, there's usually a creator figure in the polytheistic religions anyway.
So now that we have established like a cool definition to discuss about religion and this notion about necessity of religion, the difference between religion and ideology, you made another claim that was very interesting to me. And then again, your preference for Buddhism as the religion that you would choose. And you made this interesting claim about your reading of Maurice Merleau-Ponty as a Buddhist. How would you justify that?
Oh yeah, we should read this soon. His religious text, like we've read pretty thoroughly, I think, on this podcast, Phenomenology of Perception.
Yeah.
It's like 800 pages, but we've done
a lot of it.
20 episodes, 15, 20?
Probably not that much. We've probably done like maybe 8 to 10.
And it's pretty good. I think somebody mentioned it on the chat I think is the one philosopher where the four of us like agree upon.
Yeah.
No, but
also before he died, and I did a Patreon video on this like 5 years ago, but he wrote a book called, I think it's a collection. It's called The Invisible and the Invisible. Or is it a total?
Invisible.
Or is it a total book? I forget.
It's an unfinished book, I think.
The chiasmus or the intertwining. I've got like
the flesh and the chasm.
Yeah, the intertwining or the chiasm is like it sounds religious, and this is from like or it sounds, I don't know, spiritual. Maybe we should distinguish.
Yeah.
It sounds spiritual, but it's written by a guy who's like studying bodies and rehabilitation of bodies, and it's where he ends up with that. I think he's on a similar trajectory of trying to find out like what perception really means, because perception spiritually, and I mean spiritually not as opposed to material, because that's normally how we think of spirit, material, spiritual. The spirit world is false. All of that is true. But also the way that the illusions come together. So we were talking before about the word that disintegrates in meaning if you stare at it too long. Now the disintegration of meaning, this is like more close to the real state. But the fact that words have meaning every time we see them, this is the spiritual world that we live in, this world of illusions. And the most spiritual we can get, I guess, is to then de-metaphorize or de-abstract the things that we go on believing all the time, so that you can actually really believe in them. Because if you realize that you're just mapping your meaning onto the world and that it's not really there, that kind of makes the world a very interesting place, and even a more interesting place. It's worth being curious about everything you see, because you are seeing your sight of the world rather than the world itself.
It's as if we are comfortable in the illusion, but we need to recognize that we are in the illusion so we can properly treat it in the seriousness of the illusion and the necessity of the illusion.
We also have to overthrow Catholicism. I know we've been about overthrowing capitalism for a couple of years, but JD Vance and Deneen and the Dime Square kids, I think the Hegelian e-girls are doing e-girl Catholicism now, I think.
Are they really?
Don't quote me on that. I think I saw it. But
Buddhism
is the only answer to Catholicism, because it says the substances, they're not real. They're just conventions.
I mean, I've always felt...
Thomas Aquinas, right? Thomas Aquinas, the Catholic philosopher, finished all his shit, the Summa Theologica, and at the end of his life, you remember what he said? All my works, I consider them to be as straw. My works are nothing. This is the time in his life that he had a true insight. But no one takes him seriously as a primary source on the value of his work, because they're still doing Aquinian Catholicism.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, I've always felt like the Catholics, I mean, they freak me out. I mean, I'm telling you, like all that anti-Catholic hatred that was going on in the 40s and whatever, like in America, like maybe they were onto something.
Yeah, they had it right. These people want to they're really obsessed with sex and disciplining the body. It's scary. It's freaky.
I think
they're the most dangerous too. All the most crazy Supreme Court justices in the U.S. are Catholics.
And converts too.
The fact that the Occident is falling apart and Catholicism is not being able to hold it together, it's a living fact that we need to overcome it.
I'm interested though, Pills, in the kind of this sort of post-structuralist insight that you mentioned, that you felt like this Indian Buddhist that you discovered. There's a lot of compatibility. So kind of, you're like, okay, this is stuff I already believe. But I think what I'm interested, and then it led you to these practices, right? You're like, I want to garden, make art, write poetry, but I'm curious about like
doesn't
the
that sound so cringe?
It sounds very cringe.
It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. It sounds
cringe.
awesome.
It sounds like
your beautiful garden.
It sounds like a cliche, but like hearing you talk about it, actually, it makes me really happy. It makes me really happy that you're doing that though, because I know that if you're doing it, it's you're getting a lot out of it.
It is so cliche. That's like, oh, white boy found samurai shit, and they're
yeah, exactly, and then started gardening. But my question
another
is,
yoga dad.
But my question is like the connection between the sort of post-structuralist insights, if any, like, so you're like, okay, this is a religion and they believe the things that I believe. And then how do you leap to the practice, I guess? Because it's like, like obviously in Western philosophy, post-structuralists are sometimes accused and are also like not only skeptical of, but sometimes hostile to like prescriptions, right? And I'm not saying you're following any prescriptions, right? But like, how do you like, what's the connection between those like that description of material reality or the lack thereof, and therefore I should just chill and just do the things that make me happy? Like, where's the action that follows from it, if any? Like, I'm just curious about that.
How do you invent ritual when you know the ritual's false?
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, you just got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
If you got, I can't teach like you how I meditate.
It also,
but eventually you get sort of a strategy down, and then you realize what's happening. It's like getting good at a sport. If you're good at a sport, if you're good at a sport, you know what's going on everywhere on the floor. You know what could happen. You know what might happen. You know how to solve certain problems.
And this is very much Maurice Merleau-Ponty, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
You can feel it.
This is Maurice Merleau-Ponty right on the spot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, the practice part, the action part is connected. But just to like where my question is also sort of coming from is we've also covered kind of existentialism on this podcast before. And there's like a whole debate about, you know, existentialist ethics, right? Like what comes from it, what action follows from it. And I think in a way, like I felt like something similar comes out of it in a way, that it's like, you know, there's nothing, but then you can, you know, it's like in the practice, in the action. But, you know, I don't know if there's something, but like Buddhism itself is pretty ritualistic, or it can be, but I don't know that much about it. So yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say more about.
Don't kill people, don't steal shit, don't disrespect the main god.
I always, whenever I think back to Heidegger, you say Buddhism, I think back to Heidegger's stuff about like sheltering the void, all right? Because isn't that if Buddhism has anything,
too.
It's coming in, you know, the Romantics getting into Eastern mysticism and all that. Yeah, but I mean, the idea of sheltering the void. I mean, insofar I don't know this. Insofar as Buddhism does have a cosmology, is that not kind of it though? Too, there's like a kind of nothingness at the
I think,
heart,
and that's why I think there's
it.
actually overlap with Lacanian psychoanalysis too. I think in Buddhism, just like the desire, like the part, like the perpetual, the repetition. Well, not just Lacanian, but like psychoanalysis in general. I think Buddhism is, from my limited knowledge, good at talking about the kind of repetitive patterns.
And I think as opposed to, you know, like the existentialist primordial choice freedom type of thing, seems very different. And
it is different.
And the whole idea of existence seems to suggest to me kind of solid things, embodied minds, whereas if you're questioning substance in general, then what the hell is this embodied practice? What the hell is this body thing that practice is embodied in, if we're not if we're sheltering, if we're walking around sheltering voids all day? I don't know if that's probably neither here nor there, but that's the later Heideggerian stuff kind of swings in that direction, doesn't it?
Yeah, for Merleau-Ponty, I think Amy doesn't say this directly, of course, but you can infer from his text that to be a good human is to find a few activities and get very good at them. That's when you're most not like a subject. It's when you're the most in the world.
Yes,
and that's kind of the thing. Like one of
very
the big
Marxist as well,
could be.
Yeah, of course, because there's this book about the concept of man in Marx, and it's from, I think it's Eric Fromm. I think it's from Eric Fromm, and he writes about this notion about finding the true essence of man in working, and like in stuff that you're good at, and you work and you transform nature, and that's the true essence of man.
Yeah, chopping down trees, going fishing, writing philosophy.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest concepts in Buddhism that I've mentioned here is that the self is an illusion. But that doesn't mean that you just don't be a self, or you don't believe that other people have selves. Because again, conventionally, it's a very useful thing to believe.
Necessary and useful.
You need to have like laws that are about protecting people from getting attacked by other people. And for that, you need to assume that there's like a coherence to a person. But ultimately, you know, you're just the same stuff that everything else is, which is change and movement and particles that come in, particles that go out. There's no substance even in like
DNA.
Like the particle is not a substance, right?
Yeah.
The particle is changing. The substance, even an Aristotelian like special substance or a Platonic form, these are things that can't change. Everything else changes around those things. Whereas this is where you get the Madhyamaka is the title of this guy Nagarjuna's book. And I'm talking out of my ass, but I'm pretty sure that it means middle way. That's not talking out of my ass. But I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly from the intro to his book, that the middle way is through nihilism on one hand and through believing that substances are real on the other hand. So he's a centrist. He's an ontological centrist. But it sounds really nihilistic to, I guess, Westerners, because we have a latent belief that there are substances below things or forms above things. And it's been an assumption of our philosophy for basically up to the 20th century.
Excluding some thinkers in history.
Yeah, for sure. But one of the biggest things is like language has meaning. This is something everyone believes in some way or another. But to believe that meaning is real, that's the thing that I've been saying with my mind I don't believe. Yeah. And that's the thing that like a month ago I experienced with my body mind.
I think I said this the other day in a barbecue, or not even joking, in a Sunday barbecue. Like somebody, like I had a similar experience to what you described. Exactly because I'm reading grammatology from Derrida because of the postdoc, and I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and I kept asking for every definition of every word he was using. But I was doing it like not on purpose. Like I didn't want to annoy the guy. Like I just didn't want to assume that I knew what he was talking about. So I kept asking, but what do you mean about what do you mean with this word? What do you mean with this? And what do you mean with that? In order to try to make sense. And like the guy got really annoyed and he pushed me back. He's like, it's so hard to have conversations with you. And I'm like, dude, like you have to consider the fact that the meaning of every word is just another word. But you know, they don't refer to anything. Like words refer to other words. They don't refer to things. So that's why I'm trying to make sense of how you. It's so
it's true.
Weird.
I've got a dictionary. I've seen it.
but Diego, you're being a bad friend here.
Why?
Because good means you just accept the illusion and you deal with what you have to get on with it, and you say, I'll talk about this on the podcast later with people that actually care.
It also doesn't refer to nothing. It refers to like the social compact. Like it's so it plays a game in a social compact. It's not just nothing.
I didn't say nothing.
Oh, okay.
Well, nothing insofar as it's not substantial. It's
conceptual.
Insofar as the social has no substance.
Now we're getting into the semiotic territory. But we need a different vocabulary. The self being an illusion and meaning being real. Like what the hell? I don't know about any of that stuff. You know, okay, the self could be an illusion in the sense that it's derivative of a more primary relation, like a chiasm, where it's more the relation itself is more primary than the two things that are related taken individually. That's kind of a relational way of thinking, which makes sense, I guess. And even in ancient, I always bring it up, Hesiod's theogony, right, in the beginning was chaos, and not chaos in the sense of disorder, but chaos in the sense of a gap, chasm, chiasm, that kind of chiasmus. Right. That's so there's that. But I mean, meaning being real, right? It's like what Victor said. It's a compact, right? We agree on what things mean. And when I use words and you use words and we think they mean different things, then we're going to have trouble talking. Yep. First, we have to learn what everyone, like if I agree to meet you at the store in 20 minutes and in 10 minutes I go, is that agreement real? Like, what the hell do I mean by that? Does that, no, it just means, are we on the same fucking page about this still? Or are you going to forget and go to the mall and forget to meet me? Like,
I've been late to the podcast a couple of times. And then, oh my God, is the podcast real? I don't start thinking that way because we need a better vocabulary to talk about meanings and words and illusions and fictions and realities and solid things.
if only solid things are real, or is something else real too, like patterns and
Solid things are solid enough, but you shouldn't put undying faith in them.
You can find all the little gaps inside of the little solid things, and then in those gaps are smaller things. It's like a I Heart Huckabees kind of argument.
Yeah, or the concept of the storm from Deleuze, like this notion of like, when does the storm start and when does the storm end? Like, how many of the thunders are part of the storm being considered? And like the stability of concepts, they vary in time. And most of the time, the way we relate to the things that we're pretending to mention, it's asynchronical. But that synchronicity works, like it has a level of stability, but it's never fully stable.
Yeah. And all this is why a book called The Meaning of Meaning came out in the 1920s. And there's like 28 different definitions of the word meaning.
That's awesome.
Because it's a silly word.
I thought you were going to say maps of meaning there.
No, that's a bit later.
Jung and Hesiod, and now you got maps of meaning.
Awesome.
One last thing to say about this is kind of a callback, but it functions here well. If you consider monotheism and its parallel structure to fascism, we have Führer, dear leader. Monotheism works functionally very well because as society grows in complexity, you need an inverse to how difficult decisions are to make.
Yep.
Like democracy is very easy in your family. If you're like, where should we go to dinner? Well, we'll vote on it. Very easy in that way. But if you get a large group of people with conflicting interests, the functionally simplest thing to do, which is kind of the Trump administration's raison d'etre right now, is put all the power into one person, and we can actually get shit done. If we have a system of the Führer, basically, we can get things done. But this is, I would speculate that monotheism emerges when, like, we can't have the god of the sea fighting with the god of wisdom anymore because there's too much conflict here. We need as what do you call it? Streamlined. Yeah, streamlined decision process as much as possible. And then you, like, God of Judaism, Yahweh, I think he used to be a local god, like just like every local god. I think he was the god of the Mount Sinai, where he came from, something like that. They made a bull statue out of him. But, it's the process of abstraction functionally works. Monotheism works.
It's like
Führerism works.
It's like you had a doge of the gods. It's like, we got to cut the extra fat here. We got to fire all these different gods and just settle on one. It's too inefficient.
And Christianity doesn't actually believe in one God either. It's like the devil's there and the devil's doing all this stuff. But I guess he's not technically a god, but he's worthy of consideration for his magical prowess. But
Well, that kind of ruins the point I was going to make, but I was kind of just thinking it's funny how throughout history we tend to project our political systems onto our religious beliefs, right? So when we're in the feudal system, we represent God and the heavens as like a court with a king, and now, okay, I agree with that. Authoritarianism does fit more the Christian model, right? Like what are these Democrats? They're fucking pagans, right? They want to go back to nobody's in charge, and it's just a bunch of different gods who are just like voting with each other now instead of fighting. That's the big difference. But yeah, I mean, jokes aside, there is that tendency to project our own political system or an idealized version of it onto the religions that are important for us.
Yeah, no wonder liberal democracies are failing everywhere, because like they're as a religion, they're unable to sustain the decay of the system itself.
Yeah, they're trying to go back to the pagans, not the other way, not the fascists. It's the Democrats who are the pagans, I guess, because they've got a polytheistic model.
It's as if democracies are polytheistic in the sense that there are several ideologies that you can plug upon and play believe and role play that you're defending a set of values and morals that defends the will of one God that is supposed to deliver utopia, versus like organizing under one single rule. Like, no wonder leaders as Putin and Xi Jinping are like kicking ass.
Yeah, like imagine in 1,000 years when all this disappears and the new religion comes around, and now it's like a democratically kind of theology. So now our next Bible is going to be about how Jesus was elected by the court of the voting body of angels.
No, our next Bible is going to be written in Chinese because they're going to win.
Actually, I was gonna say that they are mostly they're mostly I lost the word atheos. They're non-believers, like in the sense that like
Atheist.
China,
Atheist.
Yeah, China doesn't need religion right now. They're doing so well. Why would they need religion? Like we need religion because we're losing, we're decaying. We need something to sustain and hold the fibers together. They're kicking ass, like they're producing a lot, they are owning technology, they're prospering. Like religion seems less necessary.
I think that's a truism, that religion becomes necessary in crisis. So liberalism, just fine, right? As long as your standards of living expected at the end of your life are higher than at the beginning of your life, liberalism, totally fine. The second the graph goes down, or all the money is being hoovered up and transferred to the 1%, and your quality of life gets worse, now you need a religious explanation for why things are getting worse. Yeah. So then it's capitalists for people of our persuasion, or it's immigrants, or it's the moral crisis of the West because we watch porn and we don't stick to our assigned gender roles anymore. Yeah. So you need an explanation for the downturn, and that's, I'm still a materialist. Don't worry about that. It's still originally just a physical experience of watching your life get worse, feeling it get worse, being worried, being anxious. Yeah. Then this has to be turned into a metaphoric structure, an ideology of why it's happening. And then you have to... So liberalism just says, let's keep going, everything's good. As soon as things stop going good, then you need something a little more extreme. You need the end of the world. You need the apocalypse and the prophet, the prophet who will bring the end of the world for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like it.
When that myth of progress, when that doesn't hold up so much anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, I guess you don't really have another life to compare your life to, but you do learn about what the world was like when your parents were younger or somebody from them. And then you can start to think, oh, wow, like it sounds like what I can do and afford is a lot less now. I thought the next generation was supposed to be better off than the previous ones. That's what I don't know. You have to get some, abstraction is just unavoidable in all of these things, right? But like society is an abstraction, and then you have to religion and all those kinds of ideas you were saying. I think I was listening to your solo diatribe from that. But it all begins with abstraction.
And we're all religious. I found this was poignant to say we're all religious because Dawkins just decided, after being the atheist who debated Christians, who debated Muslims, who warned us against the evils, just says, yeah, socially I'm a Christian. And he's right about that. And socially always, all along, he's been a Christian or just a religious person, you know?
And he says it's the best one because it's not inherently violent like Islam is what he's going to say about like.
So what's the name for the bad kind of religion? Because if we're all religious, but there's obviously ones that are
just said it. If you're Dawkins, it's Islam. if you're a lot of people, it's Islam right now is the name for the bad one.
Yeah.
I call them real estate religions because they have to have an income, and they have to have enough rules to make sure that they don't lose their physical land. So that's
there you go. That's helpful.
Anyone that owns land as their religion, bad, good, who cares? They're just not doing the religious function anymore. And in that sense, we are like an atheistic society, but still very religious. Like as soon as you're allowed to just pick whichever religion you want off the shelf, like I watched
You're an atheistic society.
I watched Last Samurai, so now I'm a Buddhist. Yeah, that's
What about Shinto?
Shinto.
Shintoism?
Shinto.
Isn't that like that's kind of an animist thing, right?
That's the Japanese ancestor worship.
That's the folk religion.
Yeah.
Is that a totem?
Nature
Or
nature
animist?
animism.
It's a form
Nature
of
animism. Yeah.
ancestral worship. There, like location. That's one of the location based things. I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but insofar as Buddhism isn't really location based, right? You can do Buddhism anywhere. There's no Mecca. There's no birthplace of Jesus. That it's kind of if you have a statue and you can claim that it has antiquity and that it resembles the real Buddha, what's his name, Shakyamuni Buddha, like the real historical 5th, 6th century BCE Buddha who founded the religion, you say this is a likeness of that Buddha and it's the best one in the world. But I mean, every Buddhist shrine that has a Buddha in it might make that claim anyway. But that's what gives it the authority. It really is a likeness of Shakyamuni Buddha. Before pre-transcendent, there's also transcendental Buddhist statues, but the Buddha Shakyamunis are supposed to be the likeness of the actual historical Buddha, not the transcendent Buddha you see sometimes. Shinto's kind of place-based, right? Because you'll have definite ties to geographical locations in Japan.
Shrines.
that are important there. And it's interesting how book culture then develops in Japan versus how it developed in the Gutenberg West as a result. But anyway, I'm going off top. I'm doing my bringing in too many ideas at the end thing again.
Well, I'm down to do Buddhism or the visible and the invisible.
Back to Ponty,
but not phenomenology.
As an Orientalist podcast, we're going to read Maurice Merleau-Ponty.
Sorry, Saeed. We are
officially Orientalists. Yeah.
Save us,
You should
China.
probably change the subheading of Pill Pod, an Orientalist podcast.
We already half of it. We already at least half Orientalist. I can assure that much. I was always Orientalist. Actually,
Please, G. Please, G.
Save us from Occidental decadence.
oh my God,
Guys.
in
Nice to have you back,
Oriental.
Pills. Nice to have you back, Mr. Pills.
Yeah, it's good to see, and it's good that I'm happy to hear that you found a spiritual awakening.
I hope I'm exuding inner peace.
You are. You look younger.
You actually are. You actually do seem a bit more at peace. You do.
Buy my self-help book on how to achieve inner peace.
Well, it sounds like an opportunity.
How to
Didn't
look
you tell
and
me that
feel
you've been
younger.
approached by you've been approached by publishers being like, please write something for us.
Yes, but never on religion. I don't know if this stuck in your mind the way it did for me, but this is all back to like Durkheim saying religion, God is a metaphor for society. That's all you need to know.
What a gut punch. I love it.
That's an interesting. I mean, I'm not going to open up another vista here, but
I'm about to open up another vista here.
Well, I think there is some truth to that story if you've heard it, right? I guess German idealism, rationalism, whatever, they just replaced God with reason, and then reason became God, basically. And I was reading Peirce and even Charles Peirce, a Victorian era thinker, I guess, and he said exactly this. Faith is. He says faith is being prepared to act or conform your behavior to something, but you're not really sure what it is. And he says every scientist who reasons about things has faith that the world is governed by reason. He says, AKA God. And I always think, okay, that's like the deistic science of the deistic scientist who you can be Newton and be totally a physicist, but then just say, oh, well, math is the language of God, so I'm religious too. Well, but then the sociologists come in and want to say something totally different. The Durkheims and the Freuds want to kind of say, oh no, this has the social function. Let's look at the social function, which I'll admit is more interesting than just saying, oh yeah, God, reason is now God. What's the next God? Oh, it's language after the linguistic turn, and it's going to be something else in the future. I don't know. The new God is going to be the Buddhist void. I don't know. But
well, I don't reason could never actually be a god for the masses, because the masses they prefer to be stupid. This is Plato's complaint that there's always going to be few philosophers. And the reason really is that rationality and argument are not at all seductive. They're not to invoke Master Baudrillard. They're not seductive. The king returning on a horse to fight the dragon and kill the enemies. This is seduction. The viscerality of your soul being washed in the blood of the lamb. And the windows and the ritual. This is what's seductive, and reason is just quite boring in comparison, which is why
absolutely true.
It can never become a mass adopted.
Trump putting his arm up after getting shot. That's seductive.
Yeah, turning himself into a JoJo Bizarre Adventure anime opening. But it's strange that in the era of like a predominant logic of productivity, we need to be seduced in order not to produce. You know, like this opposition that is presented by Baudrillard, that seduction is opposed to production. And in a way, I think like my takeaway from this conversation is that now I'm fully okay with believing. I don't care about knowing anymore.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far.
All right, that seems like a good place to wrap it up. I have to cut a whole bunch from the beginning when we were trying to fix our audio, so I'm hoping that this is long enough. But I think
it'll be a tight episode.
Yeah, nothing is real.
Natural
belief is okay. Knowledge is unnecessary.
I think all philosophy needs to be written as poetry because it's much more concise.
Oh, Nietzsche.
There's material constraints, right? Because paper's expensive 2,000 years ago. Anyway.
Hey, if religion satisfies that knowledge craving, then maybe we just need to get rid of that craving.
Yeah.
Desire is suffering. See you guys.
Yeah. True.